The moment a child is born, the mother is also born. She never existed before. The woman existed, but the mother never. A mother is something absolutely new. She got married not just to have her husband's children, but her brother-in-law's children, or any children, as long as she grew them inside her. Erickson was found guilty of baby selling. She was found guilty of child trafficking. Hi guys, welcome back. I'm happy to be back with you today. The last video I made about this topic, surrogacy, made quite a few people mad. More people than the Manosphere videos, which surprised me. So I thought I would continue the topic because I think it is a very important topic. All right, so let's get on with it. As I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, I came across this reel, a reel of a couple discussing another couple's issues, let's say. This is a couple that essentially has other people write into the show. They read whatever they wrote and then they issue out advice. So long story short, a woman that wrote into the show, she was wondering if her desire for carrying a sperm donor child because of her husband's infertility was a selfish act on her part. You see, before they got married, and I know this isn't exactly surrogacy, but bear with me, okay? Before they got married, they both knew that the husband could not father a child, but they had decided that his brother would be the sperm donor. On that condition, they got married. Now, the brother, rightfully so, if you ask me, backed out of the ordeal. And now she still wants to have a child, but with a sperm donor. The husband is opposed to this and would rather adopt. The woman writing into the show asks the couple doing the podcast if she's being selfish, that she does not want to adopt, but still wants to carry a child herself. Now, the comment section, for the most part, agreed with the woman and, in fact, laid the blame on the husband for being selfish. After all, she got married with under the idea that she would, in fact, carry a child. My thoughts on this. This couple should not have gotten married in the first place. Now, I know, I don't know the whole story. I don't know their relationship. But ultimately, they had decided to get married under the condition that the wife would bear the husband's brother's child. Is that? Yeah. So the woman seems to have gotten married not for the marriage to this man itself, but for having children. Now, having children isn't bad necessarily, but let's consider our priorities here. She got married not just to have her husband's children, but her brother-in-law's children, or any children, as long as she grew them inside her. I have honestly no idea how either of them accepted the situation. The brother backed out, and I would not be surprised if he did so because the whole thing is weird. It's weird. Hey kid, your dad is actually not your real dad. He's your uncle, and your uncle is your real dad. Like, imagine the kind of bizarreness that this kid would grow under. And even if that's weird, the kid would at least have some semblance of who his other half is. But the other option is to have a total stranger that you will likely never meet be your father. Yes, I think the wife in this circumstance is being selfish, but not for obvious reasons. Often people think about the wants of the adults. What will the adults want? How will the adults feel in this situation? How will the husband feel? How will the wife feel? She married expecting to get pregnant by her husband's brother. Again, very weird. And now that option is being taken away from her. The possibility of her carrying a child is fading away. And that sucks for her. It really does. But her husband probably does not want his wife having a strange man's child, not biologically related to him. The fact that people think that this is an irrational and selfish objection shows us how utterly insane we are. But who will be most affected by this? Not the wife, not the husband, not the brother, or whoever the sperm donor is. The kid, the child, the one that no one really considers, apart from just being their object of their desires. The right to a mother and father that is biologically related to him or her is never considered. When parents walk out of the hospital, it is their right to take their biological baby with them. They cannot just take another couple's baby, because we have accepted the premise that babies are not interchangeable commodities for parents. That a parent has rights, but children do too. So let's discuss the idea of rights, the word which has been so misused in our modern times. Abortion rights, fertility rights, housing rights, etc. Oftentimes we confuse the idea of the right to pursue a thing to a right to possess it. So I'm specifically going to narrow it down to natural rights, because sometimes legal rights, which are granted by the government or legal system, are confused with natural rights or human rights. Rights which are granted to us by merely existing, or by nature, or by God. Rights that do not require anyone to bottle them up and ship them to you. Rights that do not require anyone else to do something for you. Rights that do not require anyone else's labor to exist. The right to life, for example, or the right to defend yourself against harm. The right to your own children, the right to your own parents, the right to be free, the right to not exist for someone else's happiness. You see where I'm going with this? These rights that preceded the government. So even though that story is not of surrogacy exactly, it is a weird story that highlights where a child's life is being pursued as a commodity to please a desire of one of the parents. Children born to surrogates have their rights to life, the rights to their parents, and the rights to be born free, all violated. So let's touch on each right. First, the right to life. Government is not responsible for giving anyone life. What it's supposed to do is acknowledge life and protect life and seek justice for the unjust taking of life. But no one has a right to demand life be created for them. The idea that government should pay for fertility treatments is ridiculous. What a government could do is do what it can do to make sure the population is healthy, that their food supply is not contaminated, that foods, among other things which negatively affect our health and fertility, be banned or limited, or at least that people are not given false information. But alas, this is not where we are, so it is up to each of us to inform ourselves. There's a story that came out a year ago on The Guardian covering a gay couple, two males who were expecting their insurance companies to pay for their IVF and surrogate to have a child. They saw this process as their right. They saw the possible child that could come out of this, an object of their rights. And as Rabbi Gilles Burnham has noted, children are subjects of rights, not objects of rights. But many adults seem to forget this. And let's think about it for a second. The two men believe it is their right to have fertility treatments done for them, meaning someone else create a baby, someone else give up their eggs for them, someone else use their body to create a child for them, and that should be the right of these two men. I'm sorry. But let's not go down that road. Which brings me to the point that many adults seem to forget that children also have rights. And also they seem to think that maybe unborn children do not have rights. Which brings me to the point that many pro-lifers talk about, that the unborn have rights. But they seem to only have an issue with adult desires when it comes to get rid of a baby for their own desires or convenience, but not for creating a child through the commodification of services like surrogacy or sperm donors, among other things. But ultimately, it's what the adult wants. This is a fulfillment of their desire, even if it harms the child in some way. So, to be clear, the desire of a child is not the problem itself. It is the means in which that desire is fulfilled. 93% of lab-created children will not be born alive. This is a figure often ignored by pro-lifers who do not have an issue with IVF or surrogacy. That means only about 7% make it out alive in the process. Most will die in forgotten freezers, others simply will not survive thawing, others will fail to implant, or be discarded for not being viable or the wrong sex, or have some characteristic that prospective parents don't want. They'll be, quote, selectively reduced, meaning aborted, or they will be donated to research. The stories that you see of miracle surrogate-born babies, yeah, they're among the few that survive the process. Most children, and pro-lifers believe they're children, most children created for the process of IVF will lose their right to life in the process. I know most people on the pro-choice camp don't see this as actual babies, but I don't understand how pro-life people can be okay with it. So let's move on to another one. Let's move on to the rights of children to both parents that maybe some pro-choicers can get behind. There's a quote by the Indian philosopher known as Osho that goes, quote, "The moment a child is born, the mother is also born. She never existed before. The woman existed, but the mother never. A mother is something absolutely new." In other words, childbirth transforms a woman to the point she becomes a different person. And this is not just a philosophical question, it's biological as well. How can this happen when the, quote, mother is paying another woman to go through this process for her? It can't. And I can already hear the anger of the people who say women would love to be pregnant but can't. And honestly, I'm really sorry for that. But in the process of yielding to your desires above all else, the child being created is the one that suffers the consequences of bonding with a woman who he or she will ultimately be separated from. And some people don't think that this matters, that they'll forget, but ultimately, I don't remember anything under 7 years of age. It does not mean that it did not affect me. In fact, there's studies that prove that, yes, children are affected by separation, children are affected by abandonment, even if they forget things like this afterwards. Studies have shown that maternal separation, which is an intentional part of surrogacy, is a major physiological stressor for the infant, and that even brief maternal deprivation can permanently alter the structure of the infant brain. I already can hear that people will say, oh, there are not enough studies, or that's not done in human babies, or the gold standard has not been met. How many children do you want to possibly cause damage to prove something that we know intuitively? But in the rise of the convenience economy and technology and modernity, we seem to forget. Studies have also shown that this type of separation can hinder their attachment, bonding, psychological health, self-esteem, and future relationships. Is it worth it? Adopted children also suffer from this phenomenon. So let me address the adoption question for a second. People should stop comparing the two. Adoption seeks to mend the broken relationship. Adoption seeks to mend a bad situation where the parents, for whatever circumstance, are not able to care for the child. Surrogacy purposely creates the problem. Adoption is an institution that is centered around the needs of children. Meanwhile, Big Fertility TM is a marketplace centered around the wants and needs and desires of adults. And not that this would convince me, but unlike adoption agencies, Big Fertility conducts no screenings of intended parents, which means that the industry places children in unmonitored households and possibly unstable and risky homes as well. So, I'm going to read you some quotes by people who have been born through alternative methods. Quote, "After watching a wrenching divorce, I never saw that dad of mine. My mother remarried and I was giving a new dad, but neither the first nor the second man ever made me feel safe in my own home. I still wonder and ponder, who is my real mother? My current mother, while growing up, never accepted me, or even really cared to grow a bond with me. It makes sense why now. There is a massive disconnection due to IVF. Who am I? I'm thankful to know I'm at least related to my dad, But when I look in the mirror, I wonder where my face comes from. I didn't know there was such a thing as a mother until I watched The Land Before Time. My 5-year-old brain could not understand why I didn't have the mom that I suddenly desperately wanted. I felt the loss, I felt the hole. As I grew, I tried to fill that hole with aunts, my dad's lesbian friends, and teachers. I craved a mother's love even though I was well loved by my 2 gay dads. One surrogate-born woman notes, children of surrogacy, just like children of traditional adoption, deal with traumas. We want to know where we come from, who gave birth to us, and what they are like. When we have children in this world who already need homes, why are we intentionally creating children via surrogacy to go through adoption traumas? And I have seen a lot of times in the past that these comments will be dismissed. They will be told to be grateful to be alive. They will be told to stop complaining because others have it worse, among other things. The desires of adults to have these babies are totally respected. But when that child then craves the mother that gave birth to them, or the father they will never meet, or the mother they missed out on because they were wanted by 2 dads, well then, they should just burden that desire alone. She really wanted a kid, so she got pregnant by a sperm donor. But what happens when that kid really wants his dad? Well, suck it up. These kids are being raised by adults who inflicted their wounds purposely for their own desire, and therefore they're more likely to feel alone in dealing with that pain. Children born of surrogacy or via sperm donation are born to fill a desire. We wonder why we have so many messed up people today. So let's talk about that feeling of the desire. Children's rights to be born free. Have you heard of Teresa Erickson? In 2012, Ms. Erickson was found guilty of baby selling. She was found guilty of child trafficking. What she was doing was implanting surrogates with unrelated embryos, and during their second trimester, she would solicit intended parents, telling them that the original parents had backed out. She was charging between $100,000 and $150,000 per baby. Her crime was not that she was selling babies to unrelated adults, which is very normal in big fertility. Her crime was that she would sign the surrogacy contract after conception. So, it's the timing that makes it illegal here. But is it the timing that makes it immoral or unethical? The preconception or post-conception contract does not change the child's feelings of commodification or their trauma of separation. Post-conception baby selling, trafficking. Preconception baby selling, miracle. There's a large study done of children created by sperm donation, which again, not as bad as surrogacy, but still bad in my opinion. Nearly half of those created via sperm donation agree with the statement, quote, "It bothers me that money was exchanged in order to conceive me." Here are some quotes of children, now adults, created via their commodification, created via their selling for the wants of adults. "I don't care why my parents did this. It looks to me I was bought and sold. You can dress it up with as many pretty words as you want, but the fact is that someone has contracted you to make a child, give up your parental rights, and hand over your flesh and blood child. When you exchange something for money, it is called a commodity. Babies are not commodities. Babies are human beings. My conception was bought and sold. My father, the sperm prostitute. He is a seller, not a donor. The cryobanks are a billion-dollar corporation, not a benevolent non-profit organization to help the infertile. Money is all that matters. Money is dirty, and I was born out of it. My life had a price, and I'm the one who bears the consequences." Being wanted can sometimes feel like a curse. Like I was created to make you happy, my rights be damned. I'd be lying if I said I never felt commodified. So are children of surrogacy or any type of commodification really born free? If they feel like there's this burden to make their parents happy because that is why they were created, if someone got paid to make them feel a desire, are they really born free? Donor conceived and surrogate born children are being raised by adults who inflicted their trauma and those children are thus more likely to feel alone in their grief. Unlike adopted children whose adopted parents are aware that there's a pain and that it must be addressed. So have I convinced you? I know many people will not be convinced because they cannot let go of their own needs above all else, or the idea that surrogacy is a totally benevolent act. There are stories after stories of surrogate mothers not wanting to give up the child they were paid to give up, or surrogate mothers who themselves have children dying to give birth for another couple. And yet we still think this industry is totally selfless, even though there are adults paying a woman willing to risk her life in the process. I already spoke enough of the children, but we all know what they want and need will be dismissed because, hey, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this industry. So who cares about their wants? That's certainly what it feels like. Talk to you next time.